Okay, this is a demonstration to walk you through how to go about working on your Elements and Principles swatch study. So there is a template in Canvas that you can print out, and what it will have are two different sides. Okay, so the elements of art are vertically positioned on the column, and then horizontally we have the principles. Okay, so the goal is that you are ultimately kind of looking for relationships in various places using magazines. So you will look for some type of imagery that shows both a line and pattern, line and contrast, line and emphasis, shape and pattern. For example, you just keep filling in the spaces. And then you will glue in on your template all of the different swatches that you come up with. Now, don't overthink this. Many of them could go in multiple places. Ultimately, just ask yourself, do you see the element and do you see the principle? Okay, this little cheat sheet will be helpful. Maybe to print off and just always have handy, just to kind of refer to as a quick refresher of what the element or principle is. I encourage you to make sure that you've watched the lectures that explain the elements and principles of art, and you can certainly seek me out if you have any questions. Okay, so keep in mind there are two sides. The student printed hers front and back, and then this was separate. So you'll end up photographing each one and submitting those to Canvas, okay? The goal is that you have variety. You don't want it to look like you got basically everything from the same magazine or you've used the same image over and over again. You also want to make sure that it has strong craftsmanship, meaning it's neatly cut. So this is kind of the main reason for this demo, is to walk you through that process. Okay, so you'll print this out either double-sided or you can have it two separate sheets. And let's go ahead and get started with this. So to start, I find it really helpful to make what's called a viewfinder. A viewfinder will just kind of help you when looking at magazines, and I grabbed a magazine here to kind of show you, and the magazine can be completely random. Decorating magazines work good. Food magazines work great. Really anything should have lots of stuff in it, okay? You'll probably find that when you flip through it, you're going to discover things that you really wouldn't have paid much attention to before. So the viewfinder will work almost like it's just going to block out all the busyness. So you'll be able to kind of lay this down and decide what you want to make. Now, to make the viewfinder, I encourage you to cut a little swatch of paper. A thicker piece of paper will work. This is an old manila folder, and you can either at a window or using your computer screen hold this up, and when you lay this on top, you'll see if the light is shining through the back, you'll see exactly where to mark. Now, I have this side marked already just for demo purposes, and I did it with a ruler. That's really important. You do not want it to look sloppy. Okay, after you have made your mark, you will then take a ruler and your X-Acto knife and cut out the opening. Now, the X-Acto knives are sharp. Let them do the work. You do not need to push very hard, so be careful. You'll press down on the ruler, and I recommend doing two of the horizontal opposite sides first. So notice how I add pressure to the ruler, and then I just drag across. Now I'm going to rotate this, and I'm going to do the other two sets. So again, kind of get over the top of it, and you will be pressing just ever so gently, dragging the X-Acto against the ruler onto the paper. Make sure if you don't have a cutting mat like I'm working on, use like the back of an old notebook or another magazine. These will really ruin a table, so make sure you're not directly cutting on to that surface. The back of old notebooks actually work good. So if you find an old notebook from another class, now this didn't quite cut all the way. I didn't quite get to the corner, so you could go back in here and just kind of by hand pick that little guy out. So now you have a viewfinder, and this viewfinder will work as a guide, as a tool to direct you where you want to go. So let's say you're looking for color and texture, okay? You can kind of look at your guide and notice, okay, I've got color, I've got texture. Now, what else do I see here? Hopefully the image is clear enough here, but basically this is just like a field of grain. And so what I'm going to do is look on my template and figure out where I think I could potentially put that. And it's okay. It can go in multiple places. Do not overthink it. And then now that I'm looking at this, I kind of see a sense of movement. You know, it looks like these are blowing in the wind. They're moving in different directions. So I might put it with texture and movement. Okay. Now I recommend after you cut them out, glue them down right away, because you can lose these little guys unless you want to get them all cut and then glue them all at once. But I would think it'd be a little trickier to do that. Now, when you are working, let's say this is kind of the view that you want. I recommend taking either a pencil or a really fine tip Sharpie and using the viewfinder, just mark where it's going to go. Now, I also recommend using scissors to get to this. Okay, I know we use an X-Acto to cut this out, but I feel like it'd just be a little easier to get to this way. Now, I am overcutting, meaning I'm not going right on my line. Okay, what I'm going to do now, hopefully y'all can see that, is I'm just going to carefully, crisply cut that rectangle out. It's a little easier to do it, I think, with scissors, because if you use an X-Acto, it's a little harder to control it. And if you use X-Acto over and over again with your viewfinder, you're going to kind of rip this apart. Scissors are just quicker too, in my opinion, just to kind of get to that swatch. So now you would take a glue stick, add a little glue on the back, and then you would place this where you think it is a good fit. Okay, this looks a little small. I must have used a different template, maybe printed it differently. The goal is that it fills the frame, but ultimately, as long as it's consistent, it doesn't look like it's torn or sloppily put together, you'll do just fine in the area of craftsmanship. Again, you're looking for variety. Grab lots of different magazines to experiment and explore with. And I cannot wait to see what you come up with. Photograph both sides or both sheets, depending on how you go about printing this. Okay. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I cannot wait to see what you come up with for your Elements and Principles swatch study.